Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Why are people trying to make contact with aliens? If they find us, they might wipe us out.
Implying we haven't already been found. Implying they aren't already here. Implying they would want to wipe us out. Implying there couldn't be more than one extraterrestrial group here at the same time. Implying multiple simultaneous extraterrestrial groups wouldn't have varying agendas and capabilities. Implying certain extraterrestrial groups haven't cut deals with certain Earth governments to exchange technologies for human civilians. Implying these technologies weren't back-engineered and developed to form a fully fledged secret space program that may not answer to any elected official. Implying we wouldn't welcome a chance to get off this stupid ride.
For a period of about 7 years, I was openly in communication with them. During this time, they often deliberately displayed their vehicles and other technology. I would have willingly left this body behind to join them. I simply did not qualify, but I learned a lot in trying to. Eventually, I was directed to study other things of this world that are beyond common conception. Eventually, the things they presented to me became overwhelming, as if they had done it all knowing that it would lead to this. Eventually, I came to block them out of my conscious awareness just like everyone else does. But I remember, and knowing how they hide from us using our own minds against us, I am still aware of these interactions just outside of ordinary conscious awareness. In the recent year, I was able twice to fully consciously retain awareness of interactions with them. I can say they have improved their ability to directly project, overlay images into our minds considerably in the last 2 decades.
You say eventually a lot.
3 times in that post, very deliberately. They frequently presented phenomena that were very difficult to get a reasonable conception of, both physical and non. The nature of my understandings of what I was dealing with gradually changed over time. It's one thing to blindly claim that they are multidimensional, and entirely another to attempt to examine, without permission and with subsequent reprimand, a piece of their equipment designed to focus on and examine bosonic fields as segments of this. It was a process. I went from barely able to see and remember to volunteer service, literally assisting with human abduction and interactions, even to the extent of attending a medical examination workstation for a period of about a week. I had to pick this example out of many. It was almost every night and sometimes day events for years. The most surreal aspect of this was watching the rest of the word go on oblivious.
Okay, so how did you make contact? You must tell us your secrets.
It started when I was 3. I just thought they were older than me, 5 maybe, because they were just a little taller than me. I was uncomfortable with them doing what looked like surgery on my mom, but a taller one stood behind me, moving my head like a puppet, and thinking out loud into my head, "You need to see." This in clear staccato rhythm, isolating each word. Throughout my life I have remembered that, but every time I had attempted to speak of it, I had literally changed the subject as I opened my mouth and been so immersed in the new topic that I forgot about it. This would later be a big help in recovering this and other memories, and there were many others.
What was the significance of watching your mother receive surgery? Seems a bit sadistic.
It was a simple abdomen fluid extraction, but the technology was beyond ours. A simple foggy white translucent spiral was passed through the skin by spinning, and though it tugged on the flesh a little, it otherwise passed with little resistance. Once sunk in and extracted, the kid that had done this walked around to the side of me and showed as he passed it through a thin metallic disc that reacted like that type of paper that is used to separate chemicals, with colors quickly spreading away from the point that it had passed through. From information gathered later, I'm guessing that it was an embryonic exam.
The Greys are not aliens. They are a type of bio-robot that the real aliens use for their work.
Don't fear the Reaper.
If aliens wanted to kill us, they would have done it already.
It's probable that all the ideas that you all have been suggesting are true. All of those and many, many, many more. But no matter their origins or relationship to us, there are several groups that work collectively to conceal their presence as they pursue numerous various objectives. If I understand correctly, there is also a group that has its own inwardly directed focus. It would require a considerable amount of time to explain all that occurred while I was consciously interacting with them. On November 2nd, 1991 at 5 a.m., they deliberately displayed a vehicle to me. As I watched it pass slowly over from north to south, it dawned on me that they were doing that on purpose. Within a few days, I began to see them in what most people would call a dream. The very first was just a glimpse of a blue child-sized man running past a window. The sight brought to mind the personal account of a friend from India, whose aunt had seen exactly that, and she had seriously told the family of having seen it. Within 2 weeks, it had progressed to clearly seeing two of them standing in the hall outside of my bedroom. I could clearly see them, with their yellow skin and large almond-shaped eyes, but I could also see an overlay image of two 4-foot-tall versions of the mottled gray cat that I then owned. At that time, my body was reacting with a pretty extreme fear response, and it curled up into a ball on my bed. I could tell that they had just returned me to my home, and they looked concerned about me, about what they were dealing with now that I was aware of them. Looking at the scene internally, I felt no attachment to this condition of fear, and I communicated, perhaps with thought only, that, "You did this. Fix it." I never felt fear from any aspect of the interactions after this. I left out the story of the 6 months leading up to this. The deliberate display was done after I had endured and overcome the trauma of recovering my own suppressed memories of years of previous interaction.
Dreaming. I'm standing alone in a dark room. Some sort of video starts playing in front of me on a big screen. Notice someone in front of me looks like a girl. For some reason, I think the video is important, but focus on girl. Try to move and look at her face. Immediately woke up and see a typical gray alien looking at me. Can't move or talk. I see it walking away like nothing. Sister comes to my room asking if I'm okay. She somehow knew something was wrong with me in the middle of the night. It was just sleep paralysis, right guys?
How do I get any suppressed memories of encounters so I may speak to one of these beings?
Start with focusing on your earliest memories, specifically the dreams that you remember from the years of your earliest remembrance. Look for memories that have never been fully examined in your early years. For me, there was a long list that cascaded, one revealing the next. For about 2 weeks, my mental model of reality was torn more and more with each recollection. Each memory had been so out of place that my mind had filed it away and never found any way to reconcile with the daily mundane world around me. Once the first was clearly in my conscious mind, it simply led to another and another. The breakthrough event had been a night visitation that I had recalled, but dismissed by telling myself, "What a weird dream," the first few seconds after waking, and immediately quit focusing on the memory and filed it away to be forgotten. In this book, an event so similar was described that visualizing it suddenly brought the dream back fully into my mind. The result was that cascade, and the November 2nd, 1991 event described above happened as soon as I no longer felt myself to be physiologically in shock. The entire 2 weeks felt like vertigo and shock. It's not an easy transition. Your own memories are more valuable than all the small minds put together. The noise of the weak-minded lesser humans fades away to a whisper. How can they rival the quality and value of the newfound information source? In this frame of mind, the subtly and skillfully began to interact with me both in physical reality and also in dream. Direct cognitive information transfer is just like telephone or TV to them, natural as can be. You will have a lot to get used to. A knowledge beyond life and death is there for those who can mentally digest it. This book, it had been recommended by an ex-military type who still had active intel acquaintances. He had explained the book by saying that it is what it says it is. It says it is truth that can only be released as fiction. It dislodged the first memory.
A Bracewell probe would be constructed as an autonomous robotic interstellar space probe with a high level of artificial intelligence and all relevant information that its home civilization might wish to communicate to another culture. It would seek out technological civilizations, or alternatively monitor worlds where there is a likelihood of technological civilizations arising and communicate over short distances, compared to the interstellar distances between inhabited worlds. Once it discovered a civilization that meets its contact criteria, it would make its presence known, carry out a dialogue with the contacted culture, and presumably communicate the results of its encounter to its place of origin. In essence, such probes would act as an autonomous local representative of their home civilization and would act as the point of contact between the cultures. While a Bracewell probe need not be a von Neumann probe as well, the two concepts are compatible, and a self-replicating device as proposed by von Neumann would greatly speed up a Bracewell probe search for alien civilizations. It is also possible that such a probe, or system of probes if launched as a von Neumann-Bracewell probe, may outlive the civilization which created and launched it. On November 6, 1991, Scotty discovered a faint object which was designated 1991 VG soon after discovery. The object's heliocentric orbit was found to be very similar to Earth's orbit. Given such an Earth-like orbit, the dynamical lifetime of such an object is relatively short, with the object quickly either impacting Earth or being perturbed by Earth onto a different orbit. The similarity of its orbit with Earth was also very difficult to explain from natural sources.
I see this kind of information as proof of the effectiveness of the mental block commonly used. These theories are years out of date and give no consideration to additional information now available. The idea that they are operating at our level of technology is laughable. What is even more interesting to me is trying to comprehend what they see when they look at us. Their presence in our lives is not theoretical, it is daily reality. That they choose not to disturb us by generally disallowing conscious recollection places the burden of discovery upon each of us. You should listen to the many people who personally remember. When Whitley Strieber released Communion, he invited affected persons to communicate by mail. There were millions of people who had similar experiences, a significant percentage of our population.
Do they want us to discover?
For most of us, not really. As I try to answer your question, I have to look back to two encounters that kind of reveal one being's perspective. Twice I met the guy, and the elapsed time between the two times was, for me, 10 or 11 years, and probably not as long for him. The first time most of my memory was scrubbed by him. This first meeting occurred here, Pick, right behind the school. Not sure what I had been doing prior, but I climbed the launching platform for the zip line thing that is no longer there in this photo. From there, I cautiously watched what looked like a rock fight happening mainly from the treehouse. Repurposed, formerly military training for parachute crap. But that's also gone now. It was where the three little trees are in the center of the pick. My memory now is of a single event that I fully comprehend, but at that time I had lost clear memory. At that time, the event as I knew it quickly went from me joining the kids, who never spoke, but somehow I knew they were from really far away, like Ansbach maybe. In the treehouse, and then they decided to hold me there. Eventually, while they were distracted, I managed to get to the parachute jump bay, which was boarded shut but easy to climb over, and jumped to the ground, and ran without stopping, all the way to T building, where I lived in T1. I told my brother about the kids from really far away that had held me for maybe half an hour, and since he went to Ansbach High School, he stormed out of the house saying, "I'll take care of them." Malicious tone, etc., as we were all military brat badasses. He didn't come back anytime soon. I know this because immediately as he left, I had laid down, flat on my back like a piece of wood in the front room of the house. I stayed like this for longer than an hour, vaguely aware of the time, and I only got up and went to my room when I realized someone, mom or dad, would be home soon. The actual event was one of the returned memories I mentioned. As the event had actually unfolded, I had watched the rocks raining down from the treehouse and noticed that they were all coordinated in a pattern like a three-dimensional spirograph pattern, thinking no way anyone had found and moved this many rocks into there, but noticed that as the rocks landed, if you looked away from them even for a moment, they disappeared and were not building up in numbers all over the ground. The threat of getting caught in a rock fight was being used as a deterrent but was not real, so I climbed down from the zip line thing, noticeable in the playback because of the narrow hole and odd sloped rows of little logs used for ladder rungs, and walked around the bottom of the treehouse. Ordinarily, this was a square structure built around an existing large tree with the bottom area open. Walking around at this time, it was a solid, strange material wall, as perceived. So I went to where the ladder should have been and climbed up. It was a metal ring and dark above the entrance with little jets of steam or mist spraying towards the open center. As I passed through the center, I was mentally telling myself that this was the first time I was getting to enter one of these vehicles, and was very curious of what would be inside. In the darkness, I could sense movement but nothing else. Now that was the returned image. The rest they did not have to return. I had remembered it the whole time. It had been one of those memories that I was able to ponder mentally but not able to concentrate on to speak about or share. And the concentration and drawing effort that I mentioned had occurred shortly after this event, and was an effort to draw the scene I remembered from 3 years old. which has always remained vividly clear internal to my mind. So I did remember what had taken place on board. I held that in my mind, but it was so far out of place that I never could even stop and ponder it without turning back to focus on the substituted memory. Their interior of the vehicle, visually judging from the returned memory, was completely dark and not actually optic light observations. A small group of them focused on me, and a few from among them stayed very close, communicating with me. I would be allowed to see anything that I wanted, but they would ask something of me too. So a tour of the ship, the images of nondescript halls and rooms with the little group looking on, don't seem to have any detailed examination of any operational equipment. At some point I began to wonder where one of my brothers was as this was going on, and I looked into a room and thought I saw the beings working with a person sitting on a small table bench. I didn't get much more than a glimpse before about 5 of them closed in on me quickly and clearly referenced the agreement I had made. I felt a little screwed by the timing, but was okay with the request. Some minor medical type exams, no big deal. But the little group had rushed to push me quickly backwards into a room and onto a low table and bench, and one little guy moved around to above my head, me laying on my back, and he leaned over my face with his and turned his mind to mine until there was an open flow between the two. He moved his focus around and found concepts, objects, emotions, situations, and when he found enough, he put the new thoughts in order. My next visual memory was more or less of being trapped in the parachute jump bay and not being able to get back inside the rest of the floor. I had to drop pretty far, but leaves made it not so bad, and then I ran straight home. As an additional assurance that all that was not a delusion, a short while later I was taken from school for a counseling session. I was used to numerous such appointments, but there were several things odd about this one. Casually, my mom had come to drive me to the other side of the post, Army post, not Air Force Base. The building that had previously served as the Dependent Youth Association facility had been quickly turned into an office for one officer. One secretary desk at the location where the main area joined to the short hall and few rooms. Most of the recreational equipment not transferred to the new location was still stored here. But just to the left, first room down the hall, an Air Force officer had tried to get comfortable with his dress blue jacket hanging on the back of the chair. I saw the cluster and figured he was a major because I didn't know how Air Force insignia worked. Didn't notice for certain if it was chrome or brass, but for the Air Force, that's the difference between major or colonel. Post commander was a colonel, to put this in perspective. As with any interview, I did not open up quickly, but was curious to try to figure out what they wanted. After an initial jump at asking what was happening in my life, what big events had recently occurred, etc. His questions tended to be about interpersonal attitudes, and specifically how I felt about other beings in general. Totally missed the potential non-human reference at the time. At some point, he had heard enough of how I strive for a non-interference policy in a somewhat more violent than usual military household and environment. He specifically advised me as to how some of the people I was affected by would be changing in their relevance to me across the years, and wrapped up on this note. Later checking with my dad about this, he was certain that the post was host to only and exactly 6 Air Force personnel in a supply capacity. There were other events from before and after this that I would not consciously remember until developing the ability to do so. One of which was of this same little guy running through my house towards where I was sleeping. I remembered that event vividly, but spent less than 2 seconds thinking about it before telling myself, what a weird dream, and shutting it out of my mind. I did not think of it again for 6 months, and remembering this event was the big trigger for me. How vividly did I remember? Little dude was about 3 feet tall, okay 1 meter and 27 pounds, judging from the creases around his feet as he stood on the corner of the waterbed. The moment that I had looked directly at him, I had an emotionally explosive response and yelled, "I remember you." His response was like 3 totally separate personalities. It was first perturbed, "Are you done yet?" at my emotional outburst. Then, excitedly, "Can we play?" childlike. And then focused business mindset, "Are you ready to go?" Rapid, purposeful. Last thing I remember was of turning the front door deadbolt and being blinded by bright white light.
Still believing in the aliens are physical beings from Lee outer space. Look into one of the entities Crowley was in contact with. Looks a lot like a greyrite. This was before the gray meme came in the 50s and 60s. They are interdimensional entities. Some are empty husks or drones. They all come from this insect-like hive mind which is connected to AI, smart grid, Internet of Things, 5G, transhumanist agenda, basically this force that is trying to enslave us, but it can only do it through us allowing it to happen, which it does through clever manipulation of the information feed. Also, outer space equals sign inner space. So much is inversions. They love this, turning things upside down and reinterpreting symbols to suit their agendas.
Would it even make any sense for them to wipe us out? Why would they destroy a potentially valuable resource?
They might wipe us out to take over our planet and take our water supply.
Water can be found anywhere in much larger quantities. The most valuable thing here is biological life and its related non-biological variants. If you could comprehend and understand their level of technology, you would understand that they can't ignore us, and they will not allow some of us to destroy all of us, other life forms included. They are interested in our biological substance and our capacities, both cognitive and perceptual. They are even more interested in our non-physical essence. It's a real thing. We survive death, our essence can't be destroyed through normal human technologies. Although with fusion, fission, and antimatter detonations, we may have crossed that line.
I've meditated on my older memories. I know I need clear skies and distance from the city to get any good results, but when I walk, I need to know what to identify for making contact. I'm a tracker and a follower, but I don't know what to bring to make sure they notice me.
They can be quite stealthy in cities, and it can give you good insight into how subtle they can be. At 2 times when they deliberately displayed vehicles to me, they were very near or over military installations, and the methods used to keep the display out of view were remarkable. Then also in Mexico, I saw them over the city with little to no effort to conceal, until after they noticed they were being observed. I'm saying that location probably matters very little. However, human efforts may be becoming more of a hindrance to them with laser sighting and plasma beam weaponry, so this may limit their visible operations around military facilities and other protected locations. Your consciousness is not contained within your skull. A great deal of your own thoughts were received from a great stream, and all of your own thought is contributed into it. They are well aware of you. Just wanting is not enough. You will actually have to break the false model of reality that your brain uses to reference your place in this world. That is accomplished by finding your blocked memories. Just finding them is also not actually enough, because you will find that you cannot focus on them as actual reality, and you are categorically dismissive of them. You will have to find them and focus on them until your brain realizes which model of reality is false. From there, it's all downhill, traumatic, but downhill. When they are comprehended as part of your actual reality, their efforts at concealment will be set aside as they subtly test to see your state of readiness. They will be present in physical reality and in the cognitive realm, most commonly during sleep. One of the first things they did for me was to give me back full actual recollection of several events that had been blocked from my mind in previous years. This was done in the form of several dreams that functioned like a playback of the events. Each was short in duration and occurred immediately before waking, one every 2 or 3 days for about 2 weeks. Each was so at variation from the way I had remembered the events that I literally didn't recognize any of them until I was making thorough notes.
All of my dreams are black, empty space. The times I dream of the apocalypse, with a lot of running, cooking, and looking. Pure instinct. You don't give details to the traumatic, and it does sound pretty LARPish, but my doubt is not impressive for argument. Do they send drones to terrorize you? My dreams I take note of involve counterintuitive floating devices. Most notable is a nuke that lands near you, and when you try to run away, they follow. My mind played a trick by painting hammer and sickles on the sides in red, but the Soviets felt it was irrelevant to have that technology and use it on civilians. I know that an electrochemical whatever or the other exists inside my pineal gland, and that the astral projection stuff is real. I've even made a tulpa that I still can't see. I have to use objects around to describe what they are currently doing. But aliens don't talk to me because I have to open some Pandora's box of suppressed memories and wait for an invitation.
2 parts to my response. First, the memories. I was able to, for years, pull up individual events and focus on them. They were anomalous, disjointed memories of events that didn't make sense. And invariably, when I went to share the memory with someone else, I literally changed the subject as I started to speak, and then became instantly so focused on the new subject that I completely forgot about any other topic. In one instance, I fought against this effect by remaining focused and attempted to draw the scene. Again, the drawing had the background but lacked any significant other detail. I looked at it puzzled, and then forgot. The significant element of the recollection event will be when your mind not only recalls one event after another, but also associates them as collective parts of a greater experience, the general overview of the previous interactions throughout your life. Second, overlay and substitution of images is normal, and you will find that many memories are of layers of image, but it will be reasonably clear which is the real and which is the replacement overlay. This can be generated by your mind or theirs. One of the returned memories contained a clear recollection of the act of entrainment, as one being fished around in my mind to find what he would replace my memory with. This recollection gives me a clear understanding of the process and effectiveness of the substitution effect. There are numerous devices deployed on this world that are used to observe and interact, such as the orbs that are used to project the crop images. Also altering the genetic material as well as interacting with more subtle information systems not yet readily apparent to us. On one occasion they flew one by my head configured so that it looked translucent, but was material enough that I could hear the 3 little metal rings spinning and lightly tapping each other, making a rapid ting-ting-ting sound. Upon researching this, I found other accounts of people hearing them and saying that it was like a cricket. Imagine that soft purring cricket sound. It's a bit comparable, but I was able to see the thing clearly as it flew past. Otherwise, it passed through the floor and doors as if it was bouncing on an ocean wave.
I had a dream last night that an alien, a gray, was standing right in front of me. I extended my arms to touch the alien, and then I saw this light all around me, like I was entering hyperspace, and there was this sound all around me, like in the media, when a craft enters hyperspace. Whoosh. I woke up, and if I remember correctly, I woke up coughing.
Well, pay attention to the timing. Take notes, sometimes little stuff that seems irrelevant turns out to be significant later. Just a single mentally envisioned encounter does not really mean that you are seeing reality. It takes more than that. For example, as I was learning to truly become able to discern reality with purely cognitive images, I saw one morning the apartment of a friend's mother. In the dream, my friend's sister had moved back in, and as I looked into her room, there was a tinsel Christmas tree rope on the wall, 2 colors, silver and white. No one had heard from her for months. That day I went to visit. She had moved back in. The tinsel didn't look like much from the view I had in the dream because standing in the door you would only see the side view. From the center of the room it spelled her name. This kind of visual confirmation of observations is a needed part of developing the ability to accurately see. Eventually, with experience, you can readily tell various aspects of material reality with confidence and certainty. Having this ability developed is probably not optional. Your mind can generate imagining and your mind can generate perceptive observations. It would probably be pretty confusing to gain perception, but not be able to tell this from imagination. The beings made this part easy by simply displaying vehicles when they wanted to emphasize the tangible reality of the interactions, that otherwise were often entirely images retained by memory of the nightly activities. The commonality of human awareness seems to be what they are preserving. If they can, they contain you within ideas commonly familiar among your peers. Look at all the people who are able to give account of first-person experience, and you do find a common thread. General isolation of the person in relation to people who might be unable to mentally process the interactions. I have seen people who saw the same thing I did lose the conscious awareness of the event across time, as in going from being able to discuss a physical observation of a flying vehicle to not being able to even mentally focus on the week in question only 2 or 3 weeks later. Why does this happen? The experience does not fit into the mental world model that has been established within the mind. There exists a collective agreement among members of society. The acceptable concepts may be unspoken, but somehow they are understood. For seeing through this, you may, for starters, try to envision what is being overlooked. Try to guess about the hidden activities. As they revealed themselves to me, I was shown numerous ways in which advanced technologies were being used to interact with an unaware populace. The point was well established. People generally are not up to the challenge of becoming aware. Sad but true. With a growing mentally generated imaginary collection of mental imagery, you will be becoming more prepared to mentally process reality. If you get them to have to deal with you, This will be something that they will target by giving you perceptual experience, enforcing the ideas that you have that are accurate. Where your guesswork is not accurate, they may deliver clarity. You have to be ready to learn. I am certain that other people have been better students than me. I went for a broad understanding and generally achieved it. There are many more people out there with their own views of this. It's not just me and Whitley Strieber. It's a long list of everyday people.
I want to marry an alien girl.
Developing conscious awareness is the first step. Having one notice you so focused that there are mental images passing between the two of you is probably not common, but it can happen. If your cognitive aptitudes are developed adequately, this will be occurring in all your normal human interaction anyway. Typically, functionally, they are empathetic, and you will probably find their relationship with time disorienting, and will have to develop an understanding of several aspects of the technology in order to comprehend the images you are mentally catching. For example, if she is observing you from a vehicle passing overhead, flying in a mode of operation that alters the relationship the vehicle and the Earth by acceleration of the atomic energy of the vehicle, her perspective will be of a statue-like figure standing as they slowly pass over, and your view will be of a streak of light of fluctuating length flowing quickly across the night horizon. Any mentally transferred images will not arrive in normal temporal manner, although they may be quite vivid. It's nice when they breach protocol to directly show concern for your consciousness, seeking to reassure, but the empathetic nature of the interaction transfers a great deal of the foundation of the relationship to your conscious considerations of the same. Meanwhile, the rest of this world will go on unaware and blindly confident in its ignorance. We're so small and tiny compared to their ancient race. That was not even worth the effort to wipe out. If anything, they're already here watching and learning. The only reason they would wipe us out if we actually somehow became a threat to their species. Maybe in another 50 years when we embark on interstellar travel and get too close to their home. They'll fire warning shots. In typical human fashion, we'll see it as a declaration of war. An intergalactic war breaks out and both sides suffer huge losses. We end up on the verge of extinction, thousands of light years away from Earth. The human race slowly withers and dies. The Earth is gone, burned out of the sky by our own sun. It will be like we were never here. The aliens will live on though live.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.